3 minutes ago, Deborah Ross did something that separates real oversight from political theater. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She read Kash Patel's own words back to him, then showed name by name how his actions contradict those words. And in the 2 weeks since, everything she warned about has gotten worse. 6 more FBI agents fired in Miami over Mar-a-Lago. New York field office purged. Atlanta special agent in charge removed, all for working on investigations Trump didn't like. Ross wasn't predicting a future problem. She was documenting a pattern already underway, a pattern that has accelerated so dramatically since her questioning that even Republican senators are now privately expressing concern. If you're just finding this channel, subscribe right now, because what's happening at the FBI isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. And the systematic documentation Ross created in that January 28th hearing is now being used in federal lawsuits, congressional investigations, and FBI whistleblower complaints that could determine whether American law enforcement remains independent or becomes a tool of presidential power. House Judiciary Committee. Representative Deborah Ross, Democrat from North Carolina's 2nd District, walks into the hearing room with a folder that will change how we understand institutional corruption. Inside, Patel's confirmation testimony, his written responses to the Senate questionnaire, and the names of decorated FBI agents who've been fired in the 2 months since he took office. Ross doesn't start with accusations. She starts with Patel's own promises made under oath. I'm going a little out of order here because I want to remind you about your confirmation hearing. At your confirmation hearing in January, you said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." She pauses, lets that promise hang in the air, then continues, "And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law, and every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments." This is strategic brilliance. Ross isn't creating the standard Patel will be judged by. She's using his own standard. The promises he made to get confirmed, the commitments he put in writing under oath, when senators were deciding whether to trust him with the FBI. Those promises matter because the FBI's legitimacy depends on neutrality. Once agents believe their careers depend on political loyalty rather than professional competence, the rule of law erodes from the inside. An FBI that serves a president rather than the Constitution isn't the FBI American democracy requires. Ross then does something methodical. She tests that promise against real scenarios. So I want to just go through a couple scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on performance and adherence to the law. First question: would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party be politicization? Patel gives a generic answer. We don't ask FBI applicants where their political parties are. Ross tightens the frame. Do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for? The FBI does not. Ross pauses, then drops the documentary evidence. Are you aware that in the lawsuit Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for? Patel retreats. Since that lawsuit has been filed, it's ongoing litigation. I'm not able to comment. This is where Ross's methodology becomes devastating. Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Watch what just happened. Patel claimed the FBI doesn't ask about voting. Ross presents evidence that it did. Patel hides behind ongoing litigation. Ross doesn't argue. She simply notes the contradiction and moves forward. She's teaching the audience how evasion works. When officials hide behind ongoing litigation to avoid answering whether something happened, they're often confirming it happened by refusing to deny it. What makes this so effective is Ross is creating a documentary record in real time. Every evasion, every refusal, every contradiction gets preserved. Patel might avoid answering today, but the pattern of avoidance becomes evidence itself. When historians look back at how the FBI changed under Patel, they'll have Ross's systematic documentation of his promises versus his actions. Ross continues, does firing agents for working on cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization? Patel's answer is carefully worded. The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone. Notice that word, alone. That qualifier creates room for terminations partly about case assignments if other factors are included. Ross presses, has the FBI been sued by somebody who felt terminated based on case assignments? Since your tenure, ongoing litigation exists. Yes. And people have been asked who they voted for. Ross pivots from hypotheticals to names. You are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals, they are the things you have done during your tenure. According to a lawsuit filed last week by longtime FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Valor for bravery during a dangerous ISIS raid, had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group. Ross lays out Driscoll's credentials, not to lionize him, but to establish this was someone with demonstrated competence and decades of service. If performance and adherence to the law were the standards, Driscoll should have been safe. When the Trump administration interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicize the FBI. This is the key. Driscoll recognized that answering would turn his career evaluation into a political loyalty test. He refused, and soon after he was gone. But here's what Ross didn't know when she gave that testimony on January 28th, because it hadn't been reported yet. The purge was just beginning. Breaking news from January 23, 2026. Multiple sources confirm Patel has carried out another purge of the Bureau's senior ranks. The special agent in charge in Atlanta removed. The acting assistant director in charge of the New York field office removed. A former special agent in charge in New Orleans who'd recently moved to another job, ousted. And here's the most damning detail: as many as 6 agents in Miami were forced out over their connection to the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago. 6 agents, in one field office, all connected to the same case where FBI agents executed a lawful search warrant at Trump's resort and recovered classified documents he wasn't supposed to have. Let that sink in. The FBI agents who did their jobs, who followed the law, who executed a warrant approved by a federal judge, are being systematically removed because the subject of that investigation is now president and he didn't like being investigated. Ross continues reading names in her January 28 testimony. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served at the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. Notice what Ross does. She quotes Patel's own previous assessment. Patel himself had praised Jensen publicly. So what changed? But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. The pattern becomes clear. Jensen's qualifications didn't change. His performance didn't deteriorate. What changed was his work became politically inconvenient, and when pressure mounted, he was removed. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience, Special Agent Walter Giardina, because he worked on the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally Peter Navarro. 3 cases Ross presented, but by late January more emerged. James Dennehy, head of FBI's New York field office, forced out after refusing to give Trump administration a list of agents who worked on January 6 cases. The Trump administration wanted names, a targeting list. Dennehy refused. He was forced out. Senator Chris Coons questioned Patel in June. You said no retribution. Dennehy was forced out for resisting efforts to turn over agent names. That sounds like retribution. Patel's response: with ongoing litigation I can't talk about it, but no one on any list will be punished. That was June. By January, multiple people on those investigations were gone. Share this video right now because mainstream media is treating each firing as an isolated incident. They're not connecting the dots. They're not showing the pattern. Share, comment, tag every journalist who claims to care about independent law enforcement. But the institutional corruption goes deeper than just firings. On January 23rd, the same day news broke about the latest purge, another detail emerged. Director Patel has reportedly initiated loyalty tests, requiring dozens of officials to sit for polygraph exams and answer inappropriate questions about whether they've made negative comments about him personally. Read that again. Polygraph exams. About whether officials have made negative comments about the director, not about leaking classified information, not about breaking FBI regulations, about criticizing the boss. That's not law enforcement. That's authoritarian control. And it's exactly what Ross was warning about when she said Patel has put saving his job over doing what's right for the FBI. Dan Bongino, conservative podcaster and conspiracy theorist, installed as FBI deputy director. First time in FBI history that position hasn't been held by a career FBI agent, the number 2 position traditionally requiring decades of law enforcement experience, given to a podcaster whose qualification was loyalty to Trump. During Biden administration, Bongino claimed January 6th pipe bombs were an inside job. A year later, as deputy FBI director, he announced charges against Brian Cole Jr., a Trump voter accused of planning those bombs. Bongino left FBI in January 2026, returning to podcasting. Meanwhile, in Senate appropriations hearings, another disaster, Senator Patty Murray questioned Patel about the FBI's fiscal year 2025 spend plan, required by law, due over a week earlier. When should we expect the FY25 spend plan for the FBI? Patel's response: I will get you an answer, ma'am. I don't have a timeline on that. It was due last week, by law. When pressed about the FY26 budget request, Patel said it's being worked on. No details, no timeline. Asked if Congress should expect it in 6 months, Patel said, I don't know, ma'am. I'm not going to make up a timeline. Translation: the FBI director showed up to a budget hearing without a budget. The legally required spend plan wasn't submitted. The budget request wasn't ready. And when senators asked when they'd get the information needed to do their constitutional duty of appropriations, Patel had no answer. This is institutional collapse in real time, not through a single dramatic event, but through accumulated failures, missing legally required reports, politically motivated firings, loyalty tests, conspiracy theorists in leadership positions, career professionals replaced with political appointees. Ross saw it coming on January 28 when she delivered her conclusion. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. The phrase flunk your own test is perfect because Ross didn't create the standard. Patel did, at his confirmation hearing, under oath. No politicization, no retaliation, no terminations for case assignments, performance and adherence to law. Ross demonstrated how every one of those promises collapsed in practice. Equal standards became selective enforcement. No retaliation became systematic purges. No terminations for case assignments became removing everyone connected to Trump investigations. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story isn't over. The FBI Agents Association has said it's improper to fire FBI agents in the absence of evidence of misconduct, but that hasn't stopped Patel. Some previously fired agents are suing, including Brian Driscoll. Those lawsuits will force discovery, internal documents, communications. The evidence of what Ross exposed will become public record. The implications extend beyond individual cases. Consider what this means for current FBI agents. You're assigned to investigate financial crimes involving political figures. You've seen what happened to colleagues who pursued politically sensitive investigations. What do? Maybe you pursue with full vigor, or maybe you hesitate. Maybe you decide some leads aren't worth following. Maybe the evidence isn't quite strong enough to justify the political heat. That hesitation might be subconscious, but the chilling effect is real. This is why Ross documentation matters. She's not just exposing individual injustices, though those matter. She's exposing how those decisions create systematic dysfunction across the entire institution. When Ross delivers her conclusion, it lands with force because she's proven every element. You've put saving your job over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That distinction matters, because it gets at the fundamental question: what is the FBI for? Is it an institution that serves the Constitution and rule of law, or is it a tool serving whoever holds executive power? If the FBI serves the Constitution, agents follow evidence wherever it leads, regardless of who it implicates. Investigations are based on probable cause, not political convenience. But if the FBI serves the president, investigations become tools of executive power. Evidence helping the president gets pursued. Evidence creating problems gets buried. That's not the FBI American democracy requires, and it's not the FBI Patel promised to lead when he testified under oath. Congress isn't there to manage the FBI day to day. Congress is there to ensure the Bureau serves the Constitution, not a president. When an FBI director prioritizes keeping his job over institutional independence, that's not a personnel matter. That's a constitutional crisis in slow motion. This exchange explains something we sense but struggle to articulate. Institutions don't collapse all at once, they weaken gradually. When institutional memory is purged, when decorated professionals with decades of experience are replaced with less experienced personnel selected for loyalty rather than competence, when fear replaces independence, an FBI agent who knows that working on certain cases might end their career is an agent who will think twice before following evidence that leads to powerful people. That's not how democracies maintain rule of law, that's how democracies lose it. 3 minutes on January 28, Deborah Ross reading Patel's own words back to him, naming the agents he fired, documenting the promises he broke, creating a record that will outlast this administration and define how historians understand this moment. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse first. She quoted first. She didn't speculate. She documented. And in the 2 weeks since, everything she warned about has gotten worse. 24 days later, the purges continue. The loyalty tests expand. The institutional independence erodes. And the documentary record Ross created becomes more valuable every day as proof of how quickly an institution can be corrupted when the person leading it values his job more than his oath.